The Blaue Reiter were interested not just in the visual arts. They were interested in music, theatre, and in performance in particular, in this idea of the Gesamtkunstwerk, which means the total work of art, the coming together of all of the arts.
I'm absolutely inspired by visual art in my work. Art is supposed to trigger an emotional response, and for me, that just so happens to have a colour or a sound attached to it.
Colour was everything for the Blaue Reiter. They were really interested in what they called the spiritual properties of colour that then could feed into one's kind of emotional state.
Thinking about a colour or looking at it, I start to hear musical ideas. Having synesthesia, rather than a chord having just one sound, for me it's more like a colour palette.
The core artists who made up the Blaue Reiter were Wassily Kandinsky, Gabriele Münter, Franz Marc and August Macke. In 1909, Gabriele Münter, urged by her romantic partner Wassily Kandinsky, bought a small house in Murnau. Murnau is associated with two major developments in the modernist art. One is Kandinsky's journey towards abstraction, and another is Gabriele Münter's experimentation with reinvention of figuration. This is a portrait by Gabriele Münter, and it depicts the artist Alexej Jawlensky, who was Marianne Werefkin's partner of sorts. He's one of those kind of big men of expressionism. And what I absolutely love about this painting is the way in which she shows him in a kind of quite dry, humorous way, I think, with this plate of sausages, as if she's making equivalents between the Wurst and Jawlensky. She really captures the men of the group in these domesticated settings, and it sort of brings them down to size a little bit, I think. The standard was that only men could be artists in this period. So all the fine art academies didn't allow women in, and to be a woman artist meant you were defying conventions.
Ultimately, everybody has some kind of strange, unique way that they respond to looking at paintings or colour or listening to music. In my case, I find music and colour have a very strong connection. In this painting, there are so many musical possibilities.
We're looking at a portrait of Alexander Sakharov, the dancer, painted by Marianne Werefkin in 1909. Sakharov was a good friend of Werefkin's. He's draped in this loose blue cloth, which merges beautifully into this blue background. He's holding this delicate flower, and the centre of the flower then is picked up in the rouge on his cheeks. And it really speaks to Sakharov's avant-garde gender fluidity of the period. Werefkin is signalling freedom from bourgeois constraints. She said, "I am not a man, I am not a woman, I am me, I am I." They are, in a sense, using their artistic freedoms to break down those strictures of middle-class society and forge their own approach to life through art. The Blaue Reiter circle of artists engaged in their own very personal quest for spiritual renewal. The spiritual came hand in hand with the scientific, and the colours came hand in hand with sound. This is Kandinsky's Impression 3 of 1911. He went to a concert by the atonal modernist composer Schoenberg, and he was completely blown away. As someone who experienced synesthesia, hearing the music and painting the work was a very direct relationship for him.
The fact that it comes from a Schoenberg piece makes a lot of sense. Schoenberg was a very experimental avant-garde composer who kind of almost completely renounced tonality. It seems like quite an explosive stream of consciousness response to a quite outrageous stimulus. If I was going to interpret this work, I would work from left to right, probably. That would prompt some really exciting changes of harmony, changes of rhythm, some quite angular melodic fragments. Improvisation is one of the most raw, honest ways of expressing how we feel.
One of the legacies of the Blaue Reiter artists is the way in which they experiment with what art is and what art could be. What's becoming more and more apparent and more kind of interesting, if you like, in these histories is that it's never the history of one person. There were many women who were absolutely central to the group. The women artists have been, until very recently, left out of the histories of the Blaue Reiter completely. And without them, half of the things that Kandinsky and Jawlensky and Marc and Macke were able to achieve wouldn't have been possible.